In the video today, we're going to practice taking a running record. Prior to watching this, you should have read the Clay chapter on running records. It is possible that you have done a running record with a child in a previous class or the student that you're working with on your case study. Also, you should have reviewed the PowerPoint on running records, which is to serve as a refresher to review both the markings and the scoring, and also your MSV or meaning, syntax, and visual. In this video, we're going to practice taking a running record, listening to a child in the story Like You Were Mine. You can print the script from Carmen and follow along and practice with us if you would like.
I remember very well the day you were born. Mom went into the hospital. I was only 8 years old and I wasn't alike in the hospital room. So I sent Mom a necklace and a note. I brought the necklace from the school store. It was a heart charm with a flower in the middle and a note that read, "Dear Mom, I hope you are okay. I hope you like the gift I got you. I hope the baby is a girl. Love, Maria." Mom did like the gift and present. Mom did like the present, and she was okay, and you were a girl. Mom and Dad named you Margot, but we called you Maggie. Someone, when no one could hear, I called you Brownie because your eyes were bark brown like chocolate. I wanted to have a special name for you that only you and I knew about because I knew we had a special relationship. I got to hold you right away once Mom and Dad brought you home. You were so warm and soft. I loved you. I don't know that word. I loved you. And sometimes I pretended you were my own little boy. Baby. I pretended you were my own little baby. Sometimes I did funny things to make you laugh. I did them over and over again to keep hearing you laugh. Sometimes you shouted and threw temper tantrums. I was glad at those times that you were Mom's baby because all of that screaming drove me crazy. But I loved you anyway. Sometimes when my friends called me, I told them I didn't want to play with them because I wanted to stay home with you. My friends didn't understand because they didn't have a sister like you. I am glad that you are my sister. You will always belong to me.
Okay, so now we're going to go through the running record that you just took, and we're going to analyze the markings based on what the child said. So let's look at it line by line. What I like to do is always make my markings on the text because it makes it easier. I put up a column for errors and self-corrections, remembering that I'm going to have to mark MSV for each of these errors and self-corrections. So in our first line, the child said the entire text correctly. In the second line, the child did not make any errors, but I did note that she started with HOS for hospital, but then finished the word. So I usually just write down what the child said and then mark it with a check mark because that's not counted as an error, as is stated in your clay text. If we go to the third line though, we see that the child said alike instead of aloud. So we do mark that as an error. So let's look at MSV for alike and aloud. Look first at meaning. All right, so remember that we read the sentence up to and including the error. I was only 8 years old and I wasn't alike. Does that make sense to say I wasn't alike? No, it really doesn't. So we're not going to mark it positive for M. For the purpose of a running record, I like to put M, S, and V next to my error or my self-correction and circle it if it's appropriate. So I'm not marking it correct for meaning. Let's look at syntax. Does this make sense? Is it grammatically correct? I was only 8 years old and I wasn't alike. Again, grammatically, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I wouldn't mark it correct for grammar or syntax as well. But now I'm going to move on to visual. Look at the words visually. Remember that's the words, not pictures. So alike and aloud. I do think that those words are similar in the way that they visually appear. So I am going to mark it positive for visual. Let's continue to the next line. We don't have any errors. And following, again, the child started the word charm. I mark that because I think it's important that we note that on a couple of these words and throughout the text that the child does attempt to say the word correctly and then goes ahead and completes it. Those are good strategies for children when they're reading. So it's not an error, but I did mark for my own information. All right, now we go all the way down to this line. I hope you are okay. I hope you like the gift. Clearly that's an error. So we're going to mark that as an error, and we need to mark our MS and V. Again, you read the sentence up to and including the error. You do not read past that. I hope you like the gift. Does that make sense? Yes, to what's going on in the story. That makes perfect sense. The child said gift. How about syntactically? Is it grammatically correct? I hope you like the gift. Yes, again, that's correct. Now, interestingly enough, if you remember, the child used visual cues for alike and aloud. But let's look at gift and present. Are they similar in the way that they visually look? No, they're not. So I'm not going to mark it positive for visual. Now, we're going to come down to our next line. Mom did like the gift, and then the child self-corrected, marked with an SC, and said present. So that's going to go over in our self-correction column. Let's look at M, S, and V for this. Knowing that the child did use in her previous error meaning and syntax when making that error, how about this self-correction? What do you think happened here? Because she left it alone here. Why did she change present to gift? Or excuse me, gift to present? Remember that what we're trying to do is we're trying to figure out what's going on in that child's head when they're reading. And we can't see it, and you can't say, hey, what were you thinking about when we're doing a running record? So now looking at the errors, we're trying to analyze that. In this case, we would say that the child used visual cues. She saw that gift was not the correct word. It doesn't start the same, it doesn't look the same, and so she self-corrected gift to present. That is a great strategy, and we're glad that she brought in her visual cues on that. Let's go on down. We have an error here when she said bark for dark. The text goes a little long, so I'm going to kind of move it over to the side where we have errors over here in self-correction. Right, so we do have an error. My little marking for error didn't work. And we have bark and dark. So our sentence is someone, when no one could hear, I called you Brownie because your eyes were bark. Okay, that doesn't make any sense. Bark doesn't work here at all. How about syntactically? Is it grammatically correct? No. How about visual? Are they similar? Yes, they're very similar. We don't actually know the age of this child. We don't know if she's still doing letter reversals with B's and D's. We know those are common up until second grade. It's not something that I see as an issue as I go through the running record, but it's something I might want to pay attention to. I also noticed a problem when I was reading this in the text. I don't think the word is someone. I think that was misprinted. I think the word should be sometimes, and the child did say it correctly. So this in the text was written wrong, and it should be sometimes. She uses that word a lot in this story. Okay, let's move on down. I wanted to have a special name for you that only you and I knew about because I knew we had a special, boy, she had a lot of trouble with relationship. It's a long word, maybe something she's not necessarily familiar with. I marked that she returned and went back and reread a couple times. I went back after hearing it because she actually went back after the first time of saying relation. So she said special relation, she went back, said special relation again, and then went back and marked it correct with relationship. Okay, so is that an error? Is that a self-correction? It's not an error. It does end up being a self-correction. And the reason it does is because she actually said a word, went back, said a word, and then self-corrected that. So let's look at relation versus relationship for her self-correction. Does it make sense meaning-wise? I knew we had a special relationship. Did she use meaning here? Yes, because she's thinking to herself, okay, it doesn't make sense to say special relation. She knew that something was wrong. Cue for that is because she kept going back and rereading it. So we know that she was thinking to herself, something's not right here. Or at least that's what we're thinking is going on in her brain at that time. Again, we're thinking metacognitively, what is she thinking? So we have special relation. So I do believe that she was looking at that meaning and saying, you know, something's not right here. How about syntactically? This is difficult to call. I think you could go either way on this. I'm not sure that she knew grammar-wise that special relation was incorrect, so I'm actually going to leave that out right now. I think you could argue that she used syntax, but I'm not going to mark it positive. And then relation and relationship. Honestly, I think her main cue here was meaning. I think she really understood that it didn't make sense, but we can also perhaps assume that she kept looking at the word and saying, okay, that's an awfully long word and I'm only saying relation. So it is possible that she started using some visual cues as well to come up with relationship. All right, let's scroll down to where she said boy for baby. Again, we have a self-correction. And let's look at our MSNV. Oh, excuse me. I didn't mark for immediately first. So let's go back. You were so warm and soft. I loved you She goes back. I loved you immediately. We don't mark that for an error or a self-correction. She started the word. She didn't finish. She didn't say a word in replacement of it. She went back and then had the flow of saying the word immediately. Moving on, she says, and sometimes I pretended you were my own little boy. Okay, she clearly said boy for baby. Does it make sense? Could be, yes, that she was own little boy. You might be saying, but wait, the baby was a girl. So now I'm going to say, if I look at this solely in this line, sure, boy makes sense. But the text is about a girl. So I'm actually going to change my mind and I'm going to take off meaning. Because I don't believe that meaning is appropriate here. We know the child, the baby, is a girl. Look at that, boy for baby. What was she doing? Does it make sense? Is it grammatically correct? And sometimes I pretended you were my own little boy. Yes, syntactically that's correct. It flowed right away. Why did she change it? Look at boy, look at baby. They're very similar. They start with B's, they end in Y's. They're similar in length, but I think she knew that something was going on here. It's not a boy, it's a baby. The word is incorrect. Now, let's go back, because remember I took off meaning because I said, oh, we know that it wasn't a boy, it was a girl. But look at her self-correction. If she would have left that as an error, I would have left off meaning. But now I'm going to go back and double check what I was initially thinking. I wonder if she changed boy to baby because, first of all, she knew the baby was not a boy. She looked at the word baby. So again, I'm trying to figure out what's going on in her mind when she's reading this story. So I'm going to go back on what I said before. And I wanted to do that on purpose so you could be thinking through that. And I'm going to say, yes, she knew boy was wrong for all of the reasons, meaning, syntax, and visual. So she changed it to baby. The next two errors that we have are actually insertions. Insertions do count as errors. It's not in the text. So let's scroll down. I'm not sure if we can see them both. It looks like we're only going to be able to see the one to start. And she inserted the word that. I was glad at those times that you were moms. Excuse me, let's just go up to that you. I was glad at those times that you. That is an error. Let's look at meaning, syntax, and visual. Meaning-wise, does that make sense that she would say that? I was glad at those times that. Both grammatically and meaning, those would be positive. But visual, it's an insertion. It is not there, so it wouldn't be checked for visual information. Again, it makes sense. Good readers will do that. They will insert words that are grammatically correct, especially when we're dealing with function words like a, of, it, things like that. And so as they're reading along, good readers do that. All we do at that point is to remind the child, hey, look at what is on the text. Make sure you're reading what's on the text and just let them know, you know, it's funny that you put in the word that. It makes perfect sense, but the word actually isn't in the text. It's a nice little teachable moment. Let's go on down here, and we have again, she inserts the word that. I am glad that. We mark it as an error. Again, remembering what we did for meaning and syntax. And so we've gone through and we've analyzed all the errors. Now we need to do a total. Okay, let's go through and add up our errors. We have 1, 2, 3, that's our self-correction. Our columns didn't work too well. 4, 5. So we have 5 errors. I scrolled a little too fast here. And our self-corrections, we have one here for boy and baby. We have one here for relation and relationship. Gift for present. So we're up to 3. And that should be all. So we have 5 errors and we have 3 self-corrections. So at this point, what we need to do is figure out our percentage of corrections and, errors and self-corrections. Okay, so we've done our totals for our errors and self-corrections. I'm going to let you know that we had a total running words of 286, right? So if we're going to do our, we'll move over to this side for the ease of writing, but if we're going to have our errors, the easiest way to do this is to take your total running words minus your errors over running words. Okay? So we have 286 minus 5 over 286. This gives us a total of 281 over 286, which is 0.98, or multiplied by 100 to get our percentage is a 98 percentile. Okay, so now I'm going to show you how you would do that on a calculator. Sometimes it's not as easy to do it in your head, and I had the figures ready for us, but I want to show you this. So we're going to bring up our calculator, and we're going to take our total running words, which is 286. We're going to subtract our errors, which is 5, and we get a total of 281. We're going to divide that by our total running words, 286, and as you see, we get a 0.98. Again, to get your percentage, you would then multiply that by 100, and you're at 98%. We know that at 98%, this would be classified as an easy text. Now, I say that, but I don't want to leave you just saying, yes, that was an easy text, because we have to check comprehension. It may be easy and they know the words and the vocabulary. There was a few pauses, fluency, I'd like to see a little bit better flow, but if comprehension's good, I'd keep it as easy. If comprehension suffers, she doesn't really know what was going on in the story, I may look at this and say, even though she didn't make many errors, she had good self-corrections, I still think that working along this level might be appropriate because her comprehension was an issue. Remember, our easy is 95% or above. Our instructional is 90 to 94%. And our hard is less than 90%. I always like to remind myself, and I think you should do it as well, that let's say the child is reading a difficult text or a hard text, and their error rate's at 88%. We're thinking, oh gosh, that has to be a hard text for them or a difficult text. But also remember, they're reading 88% of that text correct. So they're still reading the majority of the text correct. So we don't want to always look at that as such a negative. We can get an awful lot of information from that. Now, let's go ahead. I'm going to erase this just for the purpose of having some space. And let's figure out our self-correction rate. When we're figuring our self-correction rate, we take our errors plus self-correction, and we divide that by our self-correction. So we don't need to bring up the calculator for this yet because we have simple numbers. We have 5 plus 3 over 3, or 8 over 3. Now's the time what you might want to bring up your calculator because it's not an easy figure. If that was 9, we could say, oh, it's a 1 to 3 relationship. It's going to be close, but not quite. So I'm going to bring up the calculator really quick. I'm going to say 8 divided by 3. We get a 2.6 or 2.7. So we've got a ratio down here of 1 to 2.7. I'm going to round that because it's over 2.5 up to a 1 to 3. My colon doesn't want to work. 1 to 3 ratio, which in self-corrections, that's not bad. I like to see about a 1 to 3, 1 to 2, 1 to 3 relationship. I know that she's using self-corrections. I go through and analyze my errors and look at that. Now, we're not done yet. The last thing we need to do, we found out that it's an easy text. At this point, I'm going to tell you that our comprehension was good. We weren't able to answer or ask comprehension questions for the purpose of this video. And then we have a self-correction rate of 1 to 3, which we also know that that's a good self-correction rate. Let's go back and look at our meaning, syntax, and visual. I think it's important for you to add those totals together as well to give you a good picture of what kind of cues your child's using. This will help you not only in your analysis, but it also helps you when you're trying to figure out what you're going to do instructionally to work with this particular child. So I'm going to do a total over here of how many meaning, syntactical, and visual errors we used. We're going to have this for errors, and we're going to have it for self-corrections. Okay, so let's go up through. Here's our first one. That was an error. We had one for meaning and one for syntax. We're going to have to kind of scroll through for the purpose of this using the smartboard, but hopefully you'll be able to follow along okay. Here we had another error. We had meaning and syntax. So let's go down. I have another meaning and I have another syntax. I'm going to do tally marks to start just to keep track. Here's our self-correction. We have an MS and a V, and here is what we had as an error, an M and a V. An M and a V for errors, an M, an S, and a V for self-corrections. Okay, here we have an error for a visual, a self-correction for a visual, an error for an M and an S. Visual, visual, and then M and an S. Let's go up, make sure that we got everything. I think we had one more to get. And it was right up here. And that's a like, and we have a visual on that error. So I'm going to scroll back down. Hopefully you didn't get dizzy on that, and we'll have our totals. Now I'm going to go ahead and get rid of our hash marks and put in our totals. Here we had 4, 3, 3, 2, and we can leave our 1 and 1. So what are we seeing when we look at this? Well, I'm looking at errors and I'm saying, wow, you know what, this is pretty even. She's using meaning, syntax, and visual. That's great information. She's a little high on her visual self-corrections, but that makes sense. You know, she's seeing that the word's not correct, and so she makes the correction of it. We want students to do that. We also, it's good to see that she's using meaning. We want to know, that's why comprehension is probably successful for her in this story, because we want to see that she's using meaning. We want to see that she's able to determine what is grammatically correct. She's using her visual information. So she's spread across the board. I think when you're looking at a running record and analyzing the data after you've done it, it's when your MS and V is skewed to one side or another. In other words, let's say we saw that she had lots of meaning errors and no visual. We know that she's not paying attention to the actual text on the page. Or if there's no syntactical cues being used, we know that she's not paying attention to the grammar at that point. So those are a little alarm bells that go off. It just helps you a little bit more analyze your data and come up with a study plan going forward. I hope this was helpful. Hopefully that you went along with it. If you did not, feel free to go ahead and print the text from Carmen, listen to it again, see if your markings are the same.